In this video, we'll be talking more about mutation, which I had briefly introduced before as a change in the DNA. So mutations are permanent changes in the DNA, changes that in certain cases could be passed on to offspring, but not always. And we'll talk about at the very end of this topic why they could be passed on in some cases, but not others. And changes in the DNA due to mutation can make some significant differences. They contribute to some of the variation amongst each other and also amongst the different plants, animals, etc. that we see. For example, mutations in carrots led to the variation of colors that you can get of carrots. And so it depends on these combinations of alleles they got, and new alleles were introduced due to mutation. So mutation can contribute then to natural variation, natural differences among individuals. It doesn't always make new alleles. Some mutations don't have that dramatic of an effect, but certain ones can. And some mutations are spontaneous, meaning that they just happen randomly. Or rather than saying happen randomly, say happen, by chance. Oops, not chains, chance. Happen by chance. So there's no direct cause. This little child here, I forget how old he is. I think he's like 2 years old or so. He's able to do one-handed push-ups. I can't do one-handed push-ups. If I did that, I'd probably have a broken nose. But the reason he's able to is he has a mutation just by random chance. It happened when his cells were making copies of themselves, of their DNA. A random error was made in the copying, and it led to a change in his genes that causes him to produce muscle nonstop. He doesn't even have to do any work, and he produces muscle. You might think, man, lucky him. He doesn't have to go to the gym. When he gets older, the ladies are going to love him, right? Well, maybe those things are benefits, but a muscle can grow so big that it doesn't function properly, like your heart. Some athletes or people who take steroids, for example, for a long time can get enlarged hearts. And if the heart gets too enlarged by the muscle, it won't be able to pump blood effectively. Additionally, when muscles get too large, they can start to tear under their own size. And so hopefully this child's gotten some sort of treatment since then to help prevent those things from happening. I don't know if that's actually the case, but it's definitely not a beneficial thing in the grand scheme. So besides spontaneous mutations, there are also mutations that have a direct cause. We call those induced mutations. They're induced by a specific cause that we are familiar with or are able to pinpoint. And so one of the three main causes of mutations, other than spontaneous, is smoking. We know that smoking is a cancer-causing agent. It changes our DNA and can potentially lead to cancer. It doesn't always, but it does introduce changes to the DNA as one of the ways of induced mutations. Another way is through exposure to high-energy ultraviolet light. When that hits our skin, it damages the DNA in our cells, can kill the cells outright, or potentially lead to cancer. And a third type of induced mutation you should be familiar with is other forms of radiation, like X-rays, for example. That's why if you go to the dentist, they'll put this lead apron over your chest area to make sure that that radiation is not going to hit other areas and potentially increase the chance of cancer. Some mutations are harmful, detrimental. So take the mutation that led to sickle cell disease. It's not beneficial to have sickled cells overall because those sickled cells get stuck. They can block off blood vessels, leading to organ damage, potentially organ failure, and even death. Yes, there are some benefits to sickle cell disease in terms of protection against malaria, which we talk about in lab. But overall, we'd say it's probably not overly beneficial. But here's an example. Yeah, there's different types of sickle cell disease conditions, either sickle cell trait versus sickle cell anemia. And we'll talk about this in lab, or have talked about it, that it provides some protection against malaria and less severe effects than the sickle cell anemia. That's much worse. Some mutations are beneficial, like the mutation that allowed individuals to be able to eat lactose for much later times in life. Lactase persistence mutations. These are mutations that allowed individuals to continue to make the enzyme lactase throughout much of their adult lives, allowing them then to have a nutrition source that other people would avoid because they don't make lactase later on in life. And so in that case, it's beneficial because there's more food available for those individuals. The last slide, or last topic we'll talk about here in mutations, is what kinds of mutations can be passed on to offspring and which ones cannot. So any changes that affect your body cells, that's everything except for sperm cells, egg cells, mature red blood cells also aren't in that category. Every other type of cell, if they get mutated, those will not be passed on to offspring, because to make a child, you're passing only on the DNA that's in your sperm or in your egg. And that means that if your shoulder gets, mutated and cancer develops there, that's not going to pass on to your offspring, because the gametes, the sex cells, will not carry that mutation. So somatic mutations, body cell mutations cannot be passed on. Only changes that affect those sex cells, like I said, the sperm or the egg, also that's referred to as your germline, only those can be passed on. So if you have treatment for testicular cancer that involves radiation, and some of that radiation goes astray and damages your sperm, yeah, there's a chance that that could lead to the mutation being passed on to offspring, and then they could pass that on to their offspring, etc. So those are called germline mutations. Germline mutations are mutations that affect the sex cells, and yes, those could be passed on to offspring.